The perfect sleeping temperature, in my opinion, is the one that really makes you not want to take your clothes off before you crawl into bed because it's kind of sort of cold. But by the time you get into bed and you got the covers pulled up, it's okay. But there should be mild resistance, mild cognitive resistance to taking your clothes off before you get into bed at night.
Welcome to the JJ Virgin Lifestyle Show with celebrity nutrition expert, fitness Hall of Famer, and 4-time New York Times bestselling author, JJ Virgin. JJ is a warrior mom whose knowledge and expertise have helped change hundreds of thousands of lives with over 3.5 million podcast downloads and appearances on Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, The Today Show, Rachel Ray, Larry King Live.
Whoa. This show is about you, not about me. I want to help you find practical, real-world ways to dial in your health and mindset so you can finally lose that weight and feel strong and energized. Stop settling for less than your personal best. It's time to find out how to look and feel better than ever. And I'll be right here with you the whole way. Hey, it's JJ. Welcome to this week's podcast. I'm bringing back one of our faves, and that's my buddy, Ben Greenfield. And just for the record, I was at an event with him recently where we went hiking with a whole group of people. And I led the way. And I was like, so kind of chuffed about the whole thing that I was like leading the way. And Ben and I were yakking the whole way up the hill, and all these people were kind of trailing behind us. And then afterwards, I see this post in the group's Facebook of like, oh yeah, I was on a hike with Ben Greenfield leading the way, and I'm like, I led the way. What the heck is that? So anyway, not sure why you needed to know that, but I just feel it's important because we are talking longevity today, and Ben's got I got 19 years on my buddy Ben, so I was like, okay. This stuff works. You're going to be thrilled to hear this stuff today because Ben is a massive research geek. In fact, we were talking offline, his next book coming out, SuperhumanRX, it's like 600 pages plus of research. But you're going to hear that a lot of the things that you can do for longevity that Ben has put into place are really, I'm not going to say they're easy because some of them are like not so much fun, like, getting into ice cold, but they are free and you can simply put them into place. How's that? Simply put them into place. So let me tell you about Ben, ex-bodybuilder, Ironman triathlete, obstacle course racer, human performance consultant, speaker, and author of 13 books, including the New York Times bestseller Beyond Training. He's a Spartan SGX certified coach. He's been voted by NSCA as America's top personal trainer and by Greatest as one of the top 100 most influential people in health and fitness. And he has a fabulous podcast as well. So you'll want to check that out. We will link to that in the show notes. We'll also link in the show notes to our last podcast as well. And you'll be able to grab all that at jjvirgin.com/BGH. So you'll be able to get that there. He also is the founder and owner of Kion, not Kion, as I've been calling it, Kion. And everything that he really does is about how can you achieve peak performance, look amazing, defy aging, and live an adventurous, fulfilling, joyful, and limitless life. So that is what we'll be diving in today. Really everything about how do we de-age. So I know that is something you're going to want to hear more about. And he gave us a little pearl today that's going to solve a challenge I've been facing. So I was super excited about that. You'll have to listen to know what I'm talking about. Before we dive into that, I just want to share this podcast review. And it's by Concerned Mama J. Says, it's love at first listen, 5 stars. Says, I've been Betty rocking for a few months now after listening to Brie on social. After following Brie on social for years, I've finally gotten serious. 2 weeks ago, she suggested listening to your podcast on one of her emails. That's all it took. I've been walking around for 2 weeks with headphones in, trying to listen to as many podcasts as yours as possible. Not only that, I've been texting links to your show to everyone I know. Oh my gosh, Concerned Mama J, you are the best. Then she says, I'm in love. And I'm in love right back for you doing that. Thank you. She goes, your show is packed so full of amazing information. I absolutely loved the show you did with Dr. Kringudis about understanding hormones. I also really enjoyed the show you did on maintaining healthy bones for life. All right. Then she goes in here and asks for a question. And let's see if I can give you some quick help on this. She says, which leads me to my question. During the show, you mentioned about having started your career studying spinal biomechanics. My 14-year-old daughter has been diagnosed with scoliosis. She has about 24% curve in her thoracic spine and 10% in her lumbar. She's very athletic, plays multiple sports year-round. She's 5'8", and according to the Shriner docs, almost done growing. They also have advised us to watch to see how it progresses. So I just did a show with Nicole Sachs, and you will want to listen to that show, Concerned Mama J, and hear what she has to say about this. She will be hugely helpful for you. So perfect timing. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. Hope that helps you. And I super appreciate you leaving that review because that helps us a lot. So thank you so much for that. One of my favorite all-time reviews. And now before we dive into the show, I want to share another one of my favorites with you. All right, Ben Greenfield, welcome back to the show. It's about time you got back here.
It's about time. Well, it's about time you had me back. Jeez.
Well, you keep hounding me. Sooner or later, I got to say yes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right. For everybody listening, no, I pursued you. All right. Or I don't know. How did it even happen? But we're here now, and I'm so happy about it.
I don't know. I think it comes down to people. Like my people contacted your people, and somehow here we are.
Yeah, I think actually my people did, and I go, "Why are you contacting Ben? I can just text them like, hello." Anyway, we digress. It's not like it hasn't happened before. So, what we're going to talk about today, but before we go there, before we dive into like all the cool stuff going on now with, I call it de-aging, by the way, because to me, I don't want to do anti-aging because that means that I just died. So I think de-aging. And we're going to be talking about that because my community is super duper interested because again, like I just turned 56. I know you're 12. I don't even understand why you're interested in aging. We're going to talk about that because are you 30 yet?
No, I'm 13 and a half. Actually, okay. I'm 37 actually.
Well, see, it's working. Yeah. You don't look a day over 30.
There you have
now, it. And we have gone hiking together, and I totally kept up with you. In fact, I think I was ahead of you, even though everybody else said that you led the way. But
you did. You were a beast. I think you had a kettlebell in your backpack, and you were wearing a training mask, if I recall properly.
Right, and in altitude. So there. Let's dive in before we talk about all that's cool now in the de-aging longevity world. Take us back to how you even got interested in all of this stuff.
Well, regarding aging specifically or de-aging.
Yeah, because you're not at the age where most people get interested in like usually it's like 45, they go, crap.
Yeah. And,
right.
and prior to that, I mean, if you pay attention to blood and biomarkers, typically the onset of aging occurs in the mid 30s. Like when you really start to see some amount of hormonal imbalance, some amount of endocrine dysregulation, creeping rise in inflammation, typically a change in gut dysbiosis, sometimes a change in the ability of muscles to be able to recover, due to lower amounts of mitochondrial biogenesis or, less satellite cell proliferation. Or
now we are going to we are going to make this so that the normal person out there knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I can explain.
So we're going to translate a couple of those things, but I would totally agree with you because what I noticed is right around the age 35, life got fair in that the people who had crappy lifestyles, who I was like, God, this is so unfair. I'm working my butt off. I eat correctly, I exercise, I get good sleep, and they look great and they're trashing themselves. And right around 35, they looked like hell. And I'm like, yay. I mean, that might not sound nice, but I thought, well, it just wasn't, life got fair right around that time.
Yeah, all of a sudden eating Big Macs and sleeping 4 hours a night doesn't work quite so well at a certain stage in your life, and you can get away with it. I was the same way. I played college tennis, and I remember I would pull over at McDonald's every day on the way to practice, and I would order a supersized Big Mac. And often I would skip the fries because I liked the Burger King fries better, and Burger King was like right up the road. So go to McDonald's, get the Big Mac, then swing into Burger King, get the fries.
Wow.
I know. I had it down. And
Hope you didn't have to
typically
go to a third place for a milkshake, Ben.
Wendy's Frosty. That was after practice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
And I had it was 21st Street in Lewiston, Idaho. I knew every hot spot for the best of the best. And anyways, typically a root beer or a Dr. Pepper along with the Big Mac, and I would go and just crush it on the tennis course for like 3 hours, when I was 18, and feel great and sleep great and look great. And I continued down that path, racing Ironman triathlon and bodybuilding, sucking down like 5 whey protein shakes a day and having 6 cans of tuna fish with ketchup for dinner and just abusing my body. But I was like hella fit, especially when I was racing Ironman. I had an aerobic engine that could go for days, and I looked good in spandex, and I could ride a bike fast. I could run a marathon fast. And, I thought I was the bee's knees when it came to fitness. And I was still kind of like old school fitness. Like I synonymized that with health. And it wasn't really until I kind of delved into the wonderful world of self-quantification that I started to identify that I was pretty much healthy on the outside, but dying, so to speak, on the inside. Like my cortisol was all out of whack and my inflammation was through the roof. My blood glucose was indicative of like pre-type 2 diabetes. My thyroid was out of whack. I was kind of creeping towards hypogonadism. Like my testosterone was plummeting, and I had all this crap going wrong inside my body. And that was the point at which, I was like 30, 31 at that point. And the light bulb kind of went on for me that like performance is not synonymous with health, nor is it synonymous with longevity. And increasingly since then, like in the past 7 years, I've really started to look into, okay, well, how can we still perform pretty well? Because I love sports. I love athletics. I love competitions. I'm never going to argue that a lot of this stuff, like, doing an Ironman triathlon is going to make you live a long time. It's probably going to take a few months off your life, actually. But
I actually love that you say that right there, because I think you said a couple things that are super important to underscore. Number one, performance does not equal health. They could, but it doesn't necessarily. And in a lot of these things, like doing like ultra sports, like ultra endurance sports, can actually be worse for you, not better.
Yeah, I mean, there's even Dr. James O'Keefe has done some studies on arterial stiffness and risk of cardiovascular incidents and just overall mortality in response to exercise. And there's a definite law of diminishing returns. It's basically once you exceed about 60 minutes of anything intense, like let's say a CrossFit workout or high intensity interval training session or something like that. And once you exceed about 90 minutes of something aerobic, like marathon training or Ironman training. And I know 90 minutes seems like a lot to a lot of folks, but there's actually a surprising number of people who are in the gym twice a day or training for a triathlon or whatever the case may be, who are well in excess of either 60 of intense or 90 minutes of something kind of aerobic. And that's the point at which you actually see increased risk of mortality and an increased risk of death because of all the rampant inflammation and oxidation and hormonal deficits that can occur in response to kind of like going to battle every day. And, so I've said that before to a few people, and they've been like, well, what about, hunter-gatherer tribes and farmers and people who are just like
marathon training every day.
Right.
The gatherers would walk and the hunters would hunt, and then they'd go recover and rest. And,
Exactly.
it's crazy. One of my favorite lines that I used to teach when I was teaching that weight loss resistance seminar was exercise can be therapeutic or destructive. It depends on the dose. And same with food, like too much healthy food is not healthy. So name a people group who said every day, like, I'm going to go out and steady state run for hours. Like they wouldn't have done that. They walked or they sprinted to get an animal and they walked,
Exactly. And you can walk a ton. Like walking is amazing. And I hunt, like I bow hunt, and I have some, some weeks where I'll disappear to bow hunt up in Colorado high country or in Hawaii or whatever. And I'll traverse 60 miles over 5 days, and I'll be active from 4 a.m. until 5 p.m., bear crawling and walking and lunging and stepping and carrying. But even at the end of one of those days, I don't feel half as beat up as if I'd gone for like a 60 to 90 minute marathon training run, because once you reach a certain level, there's actually, you can actually quantify this in exercise physiology. They call it the aerobic threshold, right? Once you pass the threshold where you're kind of out of your like easy conversational fat burning zone, and you're kind of jumping into the realm where you're slowly beginning to burn more carbohydrates. It's getting to the point where it's kind of hard. The muscles are burning a little bit. That is kind of the definition of the point at which you do start to create an appreciable amount of inflammation. And so, when somebody says, oh, well, what about all the people who are out there doing way more than 90 minutes of aerobic exercise? Well, it depends on how you define aerobic exercise. And, hunters, gatherers, foragers, gardeners, people who are working construction or painting or whatever, like it's a different scenario than pounding the pavement while you're training, or far different scenario than like a 2-a-day CrossFit training session or something like that. Like it can be a little confusing to folks, but ultimately, it's kind of like low level aerobic activity versus high level aerobic activity and beyond.
Right. And we're meant to do that. We're meant to move more. Like we need to actually park the car farther away and take the stairs and, I always say, just get a dog with like big eyes.
Yeah.
We'll just look at you like, take me out, take me out. Like right now we're living in this condo temporarily in Tampa, and like, we got to go out multiple times a day because guess what?
Yep.
Dogs are gotta go.
Are fabulous for that. Far better than cats in many ways, in my opinion. Sorry, everybody.
I'm with you. Cats. Yeah. We like cats. We love dogs. So anyway. Yeah. Okay, so back over to this. So you went and you started to test. You found out that while you could perform at a very high level, it wasn't necessarily the healthiest, and this led you on this path.
Right, and it's a pretty convoluted path, really, because when you look at all the pathways of aging, I mean, there's the immune system, there's the cardiovascular system, there's the joints and collagen and elastin, and there's the hormonal system and the white blood cells and the red blood cells. So, when you step back and look at aging and how we could de-age, so to speak, it's kind of multimodal. Like you really need to treat your body via a variety of different strategies. And so, as I started to kind of look into longevity and aging and how to kind of marry performance to health and longevity, it just got deeper and deeper, like, looking into concepts like, say, hormesis, right? Like how could we use brief exposures to cold or sunlight radiation or heat from saunas or, wild plant extracts or, things that would do damage to the body in large amounts and expose the body repeatedly to those in small amounts and kind of get what exercise would give you without beating up the body all the time. And even fasting would fall into that category. Mm-hmm. These hormetic stressors that induce resilience that seem to enhance longevity. And then
as long as they're the right, and that's so key, it's the right amount. It's that,
right.
The exercise and then rest and recovery. It's the intense heat and then rest and recover. So any of these things that you can stress the body and then it can come back and rebuild and come stronger.
Exactly. And the same could be said for, say, immune pathways, and immune system degradation is associated with, a host of different chronic disease and, even cancer to a certain extent. And so, and then I started to delve into, okay, how could we improve the health of the immune system? Could you, and some of this stuff gets kind of fringe, right? Like, could you go out and get thymus injections or begin to eat more organ meats, or even look into, this is an increasingly interesting world of medicine, look into peptides. Like, could you use certain peptide injections or oral peptides to enhance the health of the immune system? And you could look at skin and collagen and elastin, what type of topicals could help with that? Or, you could look into things like red light therapy and so, I just started to explore a lot of these elements that you could introduce into your life to kind of defy aging to a certain extent and still be able to perform pretty well too. And then a big part of it comes down to minimal effective dose of exercise, right? Like how could you stay pretty
Mhm.
fit
Yes,
without
we
beating
all
up your
want
body too
that
much?
one. It's like,
Right.
and here's what's interesting. Here I am at 56, leaner and fitter than I was in my 20s when I was a fiend, like a fiend with the amount of exercise like that I would do every day, like hours of cardio and weight training. I didn't have as much muscle mass because of all the damn cardio I was doing,
Yep.
and my body fat was higher. And it's like night and day difference in terms of my health and this, and I'm 30 years older and I'm
Right.
doing a quarter of the exercise. So it's an important message to get across here is more is not more.
Yeah, and you could even look at the certain fitness parameters that are associated with living longer. Like, let's say something associated with aerobic exercise, your VO2 max, right? Like, what's the maximum amount of oxygen you can utilize, and that's based on a few different elements, like how much blood your heart can pump with each beat, and how well your tissues are equipped to grab oxygen as it rushes past in the bloodstream, and how big is your lungs capacity, like how much air can you breathe in. That's actually associated with living longer. And the interesting thing is, studies have shown that you can increase and maintain your VO2 max by training once every 2 weeks with a targeted VO2 max training session. And that's not that means twice a month. And they've even studied the best way to do it. And it comes down to pushing yourself kind of hard for about 4 to 6 minutes, recovering for about 4 to 6 minutes, and doing that for multiple rounds, about 4 to 6 minutes. So you want to maintain your VO2 max? Well, every couple of weeks, get on a bike or go find a hill, or choose your mode, whatever makes you happy, rowing or whatever, and you do 4 to 6 rounds of 4 to 6 minutes with 4 to 6 minutes of rest, and that's it. And that targets your VO2 max. Another element that's been shown to be associated with longevity is not just walking, but your walking speed, right? Like your actual leg turnover when you walk. So you could go on a walk, but perhaps you put a metronome on your phone, or you listen to beats that are like 80 to 90 BPM plus, which for a lot of people, that many steps per minute kind of challenges them. There's even this very cool device. I found this a few months ago. It's called a counterpulse. It's a little heart rate monitor that you wear, and it monitors your heart rate as you're walking. And as it monitors your heart rate, it sends a signal to your phone so you can listen to music or beats or whatever while you're out on a walk, and it will time your steps per minute to the beats per minute of your heart. And this is very cool because in cardiovascular medicine, one of the ways that they rehab patients is they use something called enhanced external counterpulsation. And all that is it's like this pair of boots that you pull over your legs, and every time your heartbeat is in its refilling phase, it's called your diastolic phase, it will pump. You use your muscles to pump the blood back up to the heart, and it really does a good job increasing the health, specifically of the coronary arteries around your heart. Well, it turns out that if you can somehow contract your legs during the diastolic phase of your heart, you can achieve the same effect in terms of building new and bigger coronary arteries. And so what you do is you simply put on this heart rate strap, you go for a walk, and the app kind of trains you to time your heart rate to your steps per minute.
That
and you're
is
basically doing your
amazing.
own counterpulsation therapy while you walk. So that's another perfect example of a very simple way that you could de-age your heart by simply walking and timing your walking speed to your heart rate.
Is that in your free ebook you're giving everybody? The link to that?
You
If
know
not, I'm
what?
going to get it.
And
I'll get it into the show
embarrassingly,
notes.
I don't recall which free ebook we were giving, but either way,
we're going to give your longevity hacks free ebook, your guide to longevity.
The longevity hacks book. You know what? I don't think it's in there, but it'd be very simple. It's called a counterpulse device. You could Google it.
We will put this into the show notes, because here's what I love the most about all of this is I know we'll talk about a couple things that are great discoveries that do cost money or do take other time. But what we're saying is that normal walk you're doing right now, you get a nap, you wear a heart rate monitor, you get a nap, and bam, you can get more out of that walk. I love that. That is super cool. And you don't have to buy one of these, because I know that you can go in for that therapy. I used to have a buddy who did it in Beverly Hills, but you can also, they're expensive, but you can buy one. But here's how you can create it yourself.
Yeah. Here's another quick hack for you too. Two things that happen when you age. Your grip strength decreases, and that's another one that's correlated with increased risk of mortality. Meaning, as your grip strength decreases, your risk of dying goes up. Another thing a lot of people deal with as they age is either incontinence or prolapse or both. It's an issue, not only for people who exercise, but just the general population can experience issues with pelvic muscle weakening and incontinence or prolapse as they age. And so very, very simple trick you can use. Everybody has periods of time where they're sitting in their car, sitting on the airplane, on the bus, on the subway, whatever, is you can get yourself a hand grip strengthening device. I like the ones made by Captains of Crush because they can go from, not only do they have a badass name, but they can go from 90 pounds of pressure all the way up to, if you're some powerlifting Olympian, you could do like 400 pounds of pressure on one of these Captains of Crush hand strengthening devices. And you just squeeze your hand and you hold, then you release, then you squeeze, then you hold. And you can actually time this to Kegels. So as you're sitting in your car or on the airplane or whatever, you do 10 squeezes with the right hand. And at the same time, you squeeze your butt and you squeeze all your pelvic muscles. And then you release, and you do that to failure on the right hand. Then you switch to the left hand. You could do this when you're in traffic or whenever. And so again, you're tackling two elements of aging, right?
I'd love to see this explanation when you rear end somebody and they go, "What were you doing, ma'am?"
Yeah. Proceed with caution. Yeah. But I mean, if the car is not moving, you're sitting in traffic, I mean, there's no reason you can't have a little hand grip strengthening device and you're squeezing, contracting, squeezing, contracting. But that's another one that's just a very simple thing that you can weave into your life. And I have a lot of my older clients do that just when they're passive, when they're sitting down anyways. It's a way that you can train your body very easily. And again, grip strength is another thing they've studied to be correlated with longevity. And then probably one of the biggest ones, I'll throw one more out at you. It would be your mitochondria. I mentioned those earlier, and those are little organelles in the cells that are responsible for taking things like oxygen and nutrients and producing ATP, using essentially electricity to do so. Every single mitochondria is a tiny little battery, and it relies upon a proper amount of minerals and a proper electrical gradient across the membrane inside the mitochondria to be able to operate properly. And that's why when you exercise, and you exercise the right way, you can increase the number of mitochondria. That's called your mitochondrial density. And when you increase the number of your mitochondria, to clear up a definition I threw out earlier, it's called biogenesis. So you've got increased mitochondrial biogenesis. So you can produce more ATP. Well, sure, you could exercise and increase the health of your mitochondria, but there's so many other things that can increase the health of your mitochondria once you realize that your entire body is just basically a battery. So for example, when you're outside and you're barefoot, or you're laying down in your backyard and you've got your shirt off, or you're camping and you're sleeping on the ground, you're constantly exposed to an electrical frequency that's emitted by the planet Earth. And that's one way to charge up your mitochondria. It's called grounding or earthing, just basically doing some of those walks barefoot, or going outside and laying down in your backyard to read a book. And that's useful because another thing that can charge up the mitochondria and charge the human battery is infrared light, which you can get from sunlight, which you can get from some of these fancy new devices called photobiomodulation devices, these big red light panels that people are using now, and they'll stand in front of those, as they're working, or as they're laying on the couch or whatever. Light, infrared light, in addition to earthing or grounding, is another way to charge up the mitochondria. Cold and heat, which I mentioned earlier, not only give you a lot of the same kind of de-aging cellular resilience benefits as exercise does without forcing you to beat up your body as much. But those also help to maintain the electrical gradient as well. So you could take a cold shower every morning, or better yet, if you want to increase your deep sleep percentages, you could take a cold shower at some point in the few hours before you go to bed at night. And you could try to hit the sauna a few times a week.
So I take a hot bath before bed, and it's funny, I've been tracking my deep sleep, which needs to improve. And I was like, how the heck am I going to improve this? Like, I've done everything. And now you just gave me that, and I really don't want to do that.
Well, here's the thing.
Ben, come on.
You are taking a hot bath and you're keeping your bedroom cool because the blood gets shunted to the extremities during that hot bath. You can actually get a little bit of a cooling of the core as that blood kind of returns to the core. But you need to make sure if you take a hot bath that you still do keep your room cool. Or
we had a big argument over this at the beginning when Tim and I first got together, because he was a 5 to 6 hour night sleeper. So we had to correct that. And then he liked the room warm. And I'm like, no, honey, like, we got to crank this one down. Now he's used to it. But boy,
the perfect sleeping temperature, in my opinion, is the one that really makes you not want to take your clothes off before you crawl into bed, because it's kind of sort of cold. But by the time you get into bed and you got the covers pulled up, it's okay. But there should be mild cognitive resistance to taking your clothes off before you get into bed at night. And usually for most people, that's like 64 or 65 degrees in the bedroom. But yeah, the cooler you can be when you go to sleep, the higher your deep sleep percentages are going to be. We know from these Finnish studies that they did on Finnish men that hitting the sauna a few times a week, and they saw a drastic increase in lifespan, even eliminating a lot of the confounding variables with 20 to 30 minutes of sauna exposure a few times a week. And that's another thing that can also affect the mitochondria. And so you've got grounding, earthing, you've got infrared light, heat, cold, and probably the final two that you could throw into the mix would be drinking really good water and putting minerals in your water, because minerals carry an electrical charge. So there are trace liquid minerals. There are really good salts, like Celtic salt, for example. You can put pinches of that into your water. You can consume produce, if you have access to produce that's grown in really mineral rich soil, by an organic gardener or something from the farmer's market. That's another way to get really high amounts of minerals into your body. But mitochondria are not that hard to take care of once you've kind of cracked the code of treating your body as a battery and using a lot of those little strategies I just mentioned to kind of charge up the human battery.
So here's the question on mitochondria. And I just want to hear it again, because the biggest question, what would be super awesome, is if there was some way that we could test the change. Because I love, and you started out the whole thing by saying, I started doing tests, and that's where I realized that what I was doing for performance wasn't necessarily making me healthy. Like, anywhere where we can actually test improvement is awesome. And, I know the way to really look at mitochondria is do a muscle biopsy, but no,
right.
That's no, not that. Yeah, no, thank you. Nope, I'll pass. But is there, beyond just kind of going, well, how are my energy levels and all that? Is there any other way that we could say, hey, this light therapy is working, this hot and cold therapy is working, this grounding is doing something? Is there any other way that to assess, to go, yeah, my mitochondria are kicking?
Yeah, either an oxidative stress profile or what's called a urinary organic acids test can give you a pretty good idea of a lot of the metabolites that are reflective of proper mitochondrial function. So
like cysticonatate and citrate and all those types of things?
Yep, exactly. So the urinary amino acids test is pretty good. Genova Diagnostics does one. A lot of times it's combined with blood. So it's a small amount of blood plus urine. And if you do the one that has the blood, you'll get more values, but it also means you need to go to the doctor to do it. You can't necessarily order this test to your own home through direct labs or something like that. Oxidative stress profile, same thing. You need a blood measurement for that. But you can quantify some of this stuff. You can test for some of these more fringe parameters, and it gives you a pretty good reflection of mitochondrial health. And if you don't really have the cash or the insurance to get one of these more kind of expensive fringe tests, like a urinary amino acids test or an oxidative stress profile, if you just do a basic blood test, but you specifically look at inflammatory markers, and most doctors can run this test, specifically HSCRP, fibrinogen, homocysteine. What you'll get is a reflection of your inflammation. A lot of times, rampant inflammation is reflective of some kind of mitochondrial deficits,
and what would be
that can
things
at least give you some clues as well.
Cool. And what would be just some basic things that, beyond just, your energy level, what would be clues that your mitochondria are operating better and that you've increased your number? Like how would you be able to tell?
Yeah, one very simple one is breath hold time, right? So there's a guy named Patrick McCown. I forget the name of Patrick's book, but he has a very simple test in that book in which you passively exhale, and that's not a forceful exhale, right? It's just breathing out and then kind of stopping before you get to the point where you got to really contract the diaphragm and push everything out. And you don't do it like a big suck of air in before. So you're just standing there breathing normally, and you exhale normally, and then you hold. And he calls this a CP test. And I totally forget what CP stands for. But anyways, you want to be able to, in an ideal scenario, hold for longer than 25 seconds. And you're doing really well if you can hold it for longer than 40 seconds. And that can be reflective of ATP production and proper utilization of oxygen by the mitochondria. It's also a good way to test your nervous system. Like if you don't have like a heart rate variability test device or something like that, it can give you an indication of the health of your parasympathetic nervous system. And it's obviously a very qualitative test, but it's pretty simple to do. And it's just a passive exhale. You hold, and your goal, ideally, if you want to be really good, is you go for longer than 40 seconds.
I was just holding my breath. Now I'm back. The minute you said that, I blew all my air out. Very unpleasant feeling, though. That's another one. Like, you want to give me unpleasant feelings, like make me, like put me in a really cold place. And when I have to go to the bathroom, I'm hungry and I have to hold my breath. And that's like, I'm over the top. So what would you say? I know you have a cool book coming out, which we'll have to have you back on when this is getting ready to come out, SuperhumanRX. What do you think, like one thing that you're super excited about that's like kind of coming out next? What are you seeing?
Oh, it's coming out next.
Yeah, like
I normally
what's
would
on
have
the
said
horizon? What's new? Like what's new that's getting you excited out here in the whole longevity world?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I mentioned them briefly, but I would say peptides. Peptides are really interesting. These are small change of amino acids that can be used with laser precision to target certain effects in the body. So, for example, and they've all got funny names, but there are a couple called TB500. That stands for thymosin beta 500. Another one called BPC 157. That stands for body protection compound 157. And these chains of amino acids, typically they're injected via an insulin syringe, like very similar to what a diabetic would do. And those two can vastly enhance joint healing, collagen degradation, inflammation in specific areas of the body, including the gut. And that would be something like if you have a lot of aches and pains as you're getting older, either doing every once in a while, kind of like large boluses of those, or using them in smaller amounts every day, that can be really good for joints and for recovery. Another one that's used for the immune system that has some really interesting studies behind it for aging, even in humans, is called Epitalon, Epithalon. And they've done some human subject studies where they'll do an injection for about 20 days, twice a year with that peptide, and it reverses a lot of mechanisms associated with aging clocks. So that's another one that's interesting. There are two that seem to have a profound effect. These are like exercise in a bottle when it comes to simulating what exercise does for the mitochondrial biogenesis I was talking about earlier. Those two are called Humanin, Humanin, and MOTS-c, MOTS-c. And then a couple of others that are very interesting that have got some decent research behind them. One can stave off some of the neurodegeneration that occurs with aging. And this one you could use intranasally. It's also available as an injection. It's called Semax, Semax.
And don't worry, everybody. We'll have it in the show notes. It's like, I'm sure people are going,
good.
jjvirgin.com/BGH. Yes. We will have this in the show notes. We'll have it in the show notes. Okay. So go ahead.
And I'd say, if I could name one other, a lot of people, we touched briefly on sleep and how cold can enhance deep sleep cycles. Another thing I've found to really improve deep sleep cycles is CBD at higher doses, not THC, but CBD. And then in the realm of peptides, there's a new peptide called deep sleep-inducing peptide. And it doesn't cause you to fall asleep, but once you are asleep, it increases your deep sleep cycles significantly. And this would be another, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people, but I find most people do, if diabetics do injections with insulin syringes all the time, and anybody can wrap their head around this, but you can speak to any anti-aging or longevity or functional or integrative medical practitioner who can kind of work with you on peptides. There are many that specialize in peptides. You don't want to just go online and buy fringe peptides from some cheap website, because usually they're really cheap stuff that's manufactured in China and a lot of times kind of other fillers in them. But if you work with a physician for peptide therapy, honestly, I think that's one of the frontiers of de-aging, as you call it.
Cool. What's really exciting about all this is that the difference now versus 20, it's a great time to be in my 50s. Like 30 years ago, I'm thinking back to my mom and where she was at, and there really wasn't a whole lot that we knew about at the time. Like now we can put some intermittent fasting and light therapy and ground and exercise, and then start to do some of this other stuff. But a lot of the stuff that you talked about today doesn't even cost anything. And that's really exciting. And I know we just chunked a whole bunch of information in a short amount of time. You are going to be able to get access to a bunch of this in Ben's Guide to Longevity ebook, which is going to be at jjvirgin.com/BGH. Obviously, we are having you come back much sooner, especially with your new book coming out, because I want to do a little bit of a intro to that book and what they are going to be able to expect.
You aren't going to be able to carry it on an airplane. It's like 600 pages long. So it's more of like a coffee table book.
It's like an encyclopedia.
But it's interesting nonetheless.
Well, actually, I think you'll probably sell even more copies, because that's what we really need books for nowadays, is reference manuals. So that's what's super cool. It sounds like you've gone and researched the heck out of stuff, which is what I know you love to do. And I always love hanging out with people who do tons of research, because I just like to get the cliff notes of it. So I'm going to go give a couple action steps from today's podcast interview, because I know there was a lot of information here. So stay with me. So, lot to deconstruct from today's episode. This is one where you should be super happy. We have show notes. I will be linking to a lot of stuff in there. Again, jjvirgin.com/BG-AGE for Ben Greenfield age. And here's what the deal is. I'm going to give you a couple things that are easy enough to put into place right now. And the big thing I said on the interview, I'm like, more is not more. Well, more is more. What I really meant is more is not better. And with exercise, it really comes down to, yes, we want to move more. And we talked about this in the Fats Fitness program. Yeah, you want to move more all throughout the day. Now, what I love is the fact that you can get an app that can help you get more out of just regular moving. And then you want to be very specific as to the dose that you do some high intensity interval training and resistance training for, because you want to make sure that it's benefiting your heart, your immune system, and your brain, and you're helping your body handle stress better, but you're not overtaxing. So it's push and recover. So exercise is super important, and what you monitor and measure, you can improve. So first thing we're going to start doing is just monitoring that and looking at, again, how you can get more out of what you're doing there, especially with the heart rate monitoring app he talked about for walking. That's going to help you create that pulsatile effect, which was so cool. Next one was doing grip strength, and full transparency. Like, I cannot open jars like I used to. And it's like the one thing that I'm like going, oh my gosh, I'm getting older. Like I can't do that. And I think back to my mom going, can you open this? And all of a sudden I'm handing the jars to my husband or my sons going, can you open this? I'm like, oh man. So I love this idea. And I thought it was so funny. I was getting the visual of the Kegel grip strength combo in the car, but this is a great one. And grip strength trainers are so inexpensive. So that is definitely a cool one. And what I remember what we learned way back when in grad school was that, as you strengthen one area, other areas get strong along with it. So grip strength, super important. Next one. Get yourself cold for some deep sleep. It's why you want to get your room colder. It's I'm looking at now going, okay, I take that hot bath. I get into a cold room. I'm just debating whether I could get into a little cold shower right after that. I'll try it tonight. We'll see. I'm just not totally sure. And then the breathing exercise. I mean, come on, that's free. That's so cool. So breathing exercise, grounding, getting out into the ground. By the way, my son with the traumatic brain injury, this is the stuff that he did after the traumatic brain injury. He started gardening. He started getting out into the ground. He started laying down in the ground. Like he knew his mitochondria needed that. That is so super cool. So these are all easy things right now that you can put into place immediately that will start to de-age you. All right. So I want to see when we run into each other, we'll both look at each other and go, are you 25? Are you 25? That's what I'm looking for. All right. Another awesome podcast episode. Love to get your review. If you haven't left one yet, I'd love to hear it. So jump on over to iTunes or whichever platform you listen to and let us know what you think. And I hopefully will be able to give you a shout out on the next show. See ya.
That's all for this episode of the JJ Virgin Lifestyle Show, which marks another step towards a healthier body and mind. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and we'll talk to you next week.